Bridge. A boy's empathy for a robin. Audio story written and performed by Alec and Frisch. Loosely based on a true event. The story begins at a large grass field of a public park of a small, rich community, not too far from the beach of a lake. It was an absolutely perfect day. There were birds flying around in the air, and squirrels were peacefully bounding through the lush green grass of the field. It was a Saturday afternoon. A solitary boy, who was about 9 years of age, was swinging on the swing set of a playground, not far from the field. There was a lunch pack laying in the grass, barely out of the play area. The boy was just swinging, high in the air, back and forth. He would occasionally twist and turn from side to side. Time had passed, and he was now dangling himself upside down, holding his body up from the chains of the swing. The boy went back into his previous swinging position, gaining air. He kept swinging until he got as high as he could, and then jumped out of the swing, hit the wooden border of the play area. He got up, pleased with his distance, and scraped the wood chips off from his shorts. The sun was beating down. He sheltered his eyes from its rays with his arm to look at its direction. He picked up his lunch pack, unzipped it, and then reached in to pull out a vanilla Coke. The boy twisted it open, and then started swigging the beverage. After a few gulps, he exhaled, feeling refreshed. He then twisted the cap back on the bottle, and then put the bottle back in his lunch pack. The boy then zipped the pack back up, and flings the strap over his shoulder. He then got up, and continued on his lone journey across the park. He finds himself alongside a grass hill, adjacent to the large lake. The boy was holding a conveniently shaped stick that he was swinging through the air, pretending he was a swordsman, fighting off enemies. He fought his imaginary foes as he went along his way across the green, lush hill, letting out his battle cry and slicing through the air. The boy then walked down into a little opening in some foliage that allowed him to access a small secret beach. He dropped down the small ledge that was at the end of the path, leaving his pack and stick up on the grass, and looked through the gravel of the shore for a good rock to throw. He grabbed one of the rocks and observed it. After giving it a moment, he threw it back into the water and kept searching. He rejected about 3 more rocks until he found the perfect flat stone. After observing this one for a moment, he smiled and then held it at an angle and threw it across the water. Later, the boy was walking down a dirt pathway. The boy was being very cautious of his environment, still holding the stick as if it were a sword, sheathed at his side, pretending he was still being stalked by enemies. He carefully looked from side to side of the bushes around him, and then stopped where he stood. His eyes moved from side to side, very quickly and slightly, with a terrified expression. His face then suddenly began to slowly recede and morph into a more wary and glaring demeanor. He then slowly moved his eye to the right, while slowly and slightly nudging his head over in the same direction. He took his hand and placed it on the pretend hilt, on guard for the enemy, who has supposedly made himself known to the boy. "I knew you would eventually make yourself known to me, Kenshiro. Only you could possibly know my whereabouts. After all these years. How long has it been since our last encounter? Well, the past no longer matters. The only thing that does matter is who gets to continue to walk into the future. Beginning the moment after I claim your head. Yeah!" The boy suddenly turned and charged after his imaginary nemesis. He swiped at him once, diagonally to the left, and then to the right, then switched to a left horizontal swipe. He then turned a 180-degree spin while pretending to defend his back with a vertical block. He then ducked as he spun himself back around, facing the opposite way, and then thrusted his imaginary weapon forward. He pretended to defend himself from a vertical slash attack with a horizontal block. The boy then suddenly held his position. He acted as if he was locked in a hold against his nemesis. The boy struggled for a moment against the resistance of his nemesis' blade. He shook from the struggle. He then in one instance, overcame the struggle and threw his nemesis' blade off of his own, and then, from underneath his held position, he swiped once more through the space of air with another left horizontal slash. He then suddenly started rapidly swinging the stick through the air in a bunch of random directions, while moving toward the wall of bushes to the right of the dirt path. After about 10 hacks, he turned from the bush and faced back where he came from on the path. The boy then let out his battle cry and held the stick high up in the air, holding it with both hands. He then swung it down toward the ground and broke it in half. The erratic behavior startled a bunch of birds that flew out of the bush. The boy noticed this and looked in their direction, toward the blue afternoon sky. His eyes followed the birds as they flew off. The boy then just stood there beside his broken stick. He looked down upon it, with half of it still in his hand. "My name is Mitsurugi. Remember it!" He then threw the half stick on the ground and walked towards the green field ahead on the path. The dirt path intersected through the very same lush green field from before. The boy walks out into it, continuing on his day-long lone adventure. The sun was still high in the sky, and the squirrels were still bounding peacefully through the field. Noticing them, the boy smiled in the midst of the peaceful atmosphere of his environment. He then looked to the left of the field, where he saw a flock of robins pecking at the ground. The boy then started to slowly bend his knees like a predatory animal. The robins continued to peacefully go about their business. The boy slowly took off his lunch pack and placed it in the grass. The boy, all of a sudden, started charging after the birds, roaring and making them fly away. He continued to run after all the creatures, smiling, having a good time, running in circles around the field. While the boy was running around, he caught a glimpse of a solitary robin hopping across the field. The boy saw it from the other side of where he was on the field. The boy then decided to chase it down. The bird caught wind of him and started hopping away as fast as it could. The boy was confused why it wasn't flying away, so he just kept following it. It became a very amusing game for the boy. He was determined to chase it until the bird would be forced to finally take off the ground. He continued chasing until eventually the robin was cornered into a bush. Here the bird suddenly turned 180 degrees and went into what seemed like a defensive stance. This startled the boy and made him stop in his tracks. Reality started to settle in. The bird stood as it was, fixed on the boy, sustaining its stance. The boy was suddenly very concerned. His eyes moved over to notice something that shattered his innocent world of imagination. There was a thorn stuck in its left wing. It looked insignificant, as if it were just barely hanging off of its wing, like it would fall off as soon as you touched it. Yet the thorn remained, and the bird still refused to fly away. The boy tried to think of a way to remove the thorn. He held out his hand to see how close he could get, and before his arm was halfway extended, the robin jerked its head towards the boy's hand. Staying highly aware of the boy's movements, the boy then cautiously retracted his hand, and then slowly took a few more steps back, and then just remained there, kneeling motionless. "I'm not gonna hurt you. I just want to help. I want to know how to help you." The boy remained there for the longest time, pondering his options. The robin eventually felt safe enough to take its gaze off of the boy and settled into the grass. It looked out into the field. After a while, the bird's head started to droop slightly, and its eyelids began to shut. The boy stayed there by the bird's side for 2 hours. He then noticed that the sun was starting to set. He looked at his watch, and then back at the bird, who remained there, resting its eyes. He then slowly stood up, in which the bird opened its eyes in response, just barely jerking its head over in the boy's direction. "I have to go home, but I'll be back tomorrow." The boy then slowly backed up, step by step, and then cautiously turned around and walked back towards his lunch pack, strapped it around his shoulder, and then walked home. The next morning, it was another perfect day, with the sun beaming down on the park. The boy walked over to the same location on the field with a bowl. "Hey! I got you some bird seed. When the boy walked up to where the robin was, it wasn't there. Robin? The boy looked all over the spot for the bird, when all of a sudden, he found it just a few feet to the left of the original spot, partially showing, lying under the base leaves of the bush. He kneeled down to lift up the leaves to reveal the whole body. The robin had passed away. The boy remained there, gazing at the body for a long moment. When he finally was able to unpluck the thorn, it came out so easily, there was no way the boy could believe that it had anything to do with the bird's death, or even why it couldn't fly. He then threw away the thorn and brought the leaves back down. I'm sorry I scared you. I hope you didn't suffer. I'm sorry I didn't know how to help you. Somberly, the boy took the bowl of birdseed, stood up, and walked back home. He later came back with a garden shovel and garden gloves. He dug up a small hole to place the robin's body into, and then gently moved all of the dirt into the hole, and then smoothed it out. The boy then walked back home. On his way, he heard a couple of robins fly overhead from behind him. He stopped for a moment to watch where they were going. The boy then smiled and continued on his way.